Welcome back to Breaking Bullying. This week, we are going to talk to a former school board member from Cedar Falls, Iowa. We'll get right into it after I hit this music. Joining me this week is Dr. Doug Shaw. He's a professor at the University of Northern Iowa. Doug, do you want to call you Dr. Doug, Dr. Shaw, Doug? How do you want me to call you today?
Why don't we call me Doug?
Doug, I like it. Doug, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm excited to hear about your story on the school board and how you got to the school board and just about your story about your own personal experience of bullying. So, Doug, let's start back. I know I said I was going to do this differently before, but let's go back to when you were younger. What's your personal experiences of being bullied?
Well, I almost feel awkward saying I was bullied because I was, but then, you kind of grow up, especially if you're in the school board and you hear other people's stories, as an adult. And so many people had it worse than I did that sometimes I almost feel presumptuous, but I certainly know what the feeling is like. I was afraid to go to school. I felt that I was worthless. I wanted to kill myself in 4th grade, but I was a little too young to do anything about it. And then, and at the time, you just live your life, but then you look back and you realize things were not right. The 4th grader shouldn't want to kill himself. Sleeping was an issue. I couldn't sleep. I would just stress out and just beat myself up all night,
What was going on at 4th grade that you wanted to kill yourself?
Well, I was different, and I was different and people were bored, and that was basically it. I was, when I look back, I was an obvious target. I mean, part of it, we moved from New York when I was 1. I went in 1st grade. So in 2nd grade, I moved from New York, and I talked a lot and nobody could understand a word I said because I had the thick accent and I talked really fast. There was actually one kid who had to translate for me to another kid. So yeah, I was just a different kid and I was strange. And
so bullied for your accent, basically for your New York accent.
Well, it was part of that. It was just general strangeness. I was a weirdo.
Yeah.
And it was not the type of kid who, there are some weirdos who learn how to code switch, and I wasn't one of them. I just kind of stayed being myself, and it's strange because I was basically not that different than I am now, but now I found myself to surround myself with a community people who are tolerant of now I'm an eccentric because I have a PhD.
Okay. Yeah.
So it wasn't like a one specific thing, but it was, I was the strange kid, and I was targeted. And I really now appreciate how every day I go to work. I often say I go to school because I'm a professor, right? I go to school. Safety's not even an issue. I am never, ever feeling unsafe, neither physically or socially. I am never unsafe. And that's kind of my normal now. But I'm aware that a lot of adults don't have that normal.
Yeah.
And I actually had a colleague who had been bullied to the point where he still acted like a victim, even though he wasn't.
Was he bullied as an adult or just bullied as a kid?
I believe he was targeted as an adult. And he was so paranoid that it was a cycle.
Wow. Yeah, because once you lose that confidence,
I only found out I triggered him. And I mean, it was like,
really?
Well, okay. So his I'm sorry, this is not really linear. I
okay.
hope you weren't hoping for a linear broadcast. I'm walking by his office. So now he's new, right? He's a new professor. He has his office door open and he's not in it. And so I'm walking by and there's a dry erase board. So I wrote "The Eye Strikes" and I drew an eye because it's just the kind of strange thing I do. And then I ran into him like a half hour later. He's agitated and he just like in desperate, "Did you draw that on my whiteboard?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why?" And that's kind of hard to explain.
Yeah.
I said, "Well, because it was there. I saw a whiteboard with nothing on it." So I wrote and then he was all relieved, but still really shaken up. And it was obvious as one person who has been bullied to another that he was thinking, "Holy shit, it's starting again."
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes.
And I really reassure him, without saying the word bully, I was like, "No, nothing. Like, no, I'm the type, if you leave a whiteboard open, I will write some random shit on it. I was not targeting you,
Yeah. I can totally see his point though, because I was bullied myself, and, sometimes you just assume things that aren't real, and it's hard. Like, do I confront this guy? Do I bring it up? It's hard. We had a guy on this podcast named Sumo Dan. His episode was Bullying Instinct. And if you don't know Sumo Dan likes to joke around with people. He likes to have fun. But if you don't know him and he jokes with you, you could be offended by him. You could think that he's bullying you. And he doesn't, that's not his intention. That's just how Sumo Dan is. Sumo Dan's a big, loving guy. So, but I totally can relate to your colleague's fear there, because I may have felt the same way as well. And you just did it out of good intentions and having fun. The eye strikes again. That's just odd. It's kind of funny, Yeah. It just appeared on the whiteboard.
And then if I had done it to anybody who had never been bullied, they would have just said, okay, either depending on their sense of humor, some guy or some asshole did this on my whiteboard, and they wouldn't think a second thing of it.
Yeah. So you experienced, how long did your bullying last as a child?
Well, I was fine until when I moved in second grade. It lasted through high school, basically. But in high school, it tapered off because then you start... I went to a very cliquey high school. I went to the high school that was the one that was the model of Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Oh, really?
Bueller's Day Off was about my high school.
Okay.
And the director went there, And so I was bullied, but I didn't really run into people who wanted to bully me because I was in my own group,
Yeah.
It was a cliquey enough high school that I wound up in a group. We were hardly the popular kids, but...
Hey, that's okay, as long as you have that group.
It wasn't like I was regularly talking to people on the football team. It was like we were all in our little circles.
So your bullying started in second grade.
To talk about, by the way, that's an interesting thing.
It's hard to talk about, you said?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised how hard it is for me to talk about this.
Yeah, if you talk about it a lot, you get used to it. I had a hard time when I first was. I had a friend named Eric the Trainer, who sadly passed away. He's the one that got me to talk about this type of stuff. So, because it's like, why do I want to put myself out there and show weakness?
There was a project I was going to do. Unfortunately, my colleague moved away. My next door neighbor is a professor of kinesiology. So he teaches future gym teachers. He teaches physical education teachers. And we became very close friends. And we wanted to do a project, and it just didn't happen because he moved. Because all of his students are coming from the perspective that gym class is everybody's favorite class. And they don't believe him when he says, for some students, it's not.
Yeah.
And I'm a very popular professor, so I've had some of his students in my class, and they all adore me. And so what we were going to do is we were going to have him interview me about everything that went on and how I felt going to school. That was going to be the audio. And the visuals would be me doing things I didn't learn how to do in school because I was afraid to go to school. So this would be the hilarious part to show these students, because while I'm saying these horrible things, he'd be throwing balls at me to hit with a bat, and I'd be terrible at it. And I'd be going through all the gym class stuff, being really bad at it as an adult. With that voiceover to kind of show the students, look, this kid didn't learn what we're trying to teach him. And it would be very funny at my expense, which of course I can deal with.
Yeah.
But we just didn't have a project. But that disconnect is that future gym teachers think everybody's favorite class is gym. Now I'm going to give you something to edit out. Alexa, stop. That was my alarm saying that this podcast was about to happen. Okay.
Yeah, no worries. So what's fun about my podcast is I'll edit out the audio stuff pretty heavily, but in the YouTube version, I just throw it all out there. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's easy. No worries. So we'll see all this stuff.
Uses Alexa. Okay.
Shaw uses Alexa. So Doug, I want to jump to, first I want to talk about when you ran for school board, did you experience any hatred towards you?
No.
No?
This was the surprise. So Cedar Falls at the time, it's not like that now, probably thanks to me. There was a group of kind of insiders. So all the people who ran for school board knew each other. They also knew the people from city council. It was a really kind of insular community of rulers. And I'm not saying they were bad people. They had nothing to hide, but this was it. And so I ran in as an outsider. So they didn't want me there.
Okay.
The quote from, there's this guy who's never been on the school board, but he's a big benefactor to the school system. I'm not going to say his name. The quote I heard from him was, "Who the fuck is Doug Shaw?" When it looked like I was doing well. But what I was surprised is once I was in the board, even the guy who I thought I was going to clash with, the Christian conservative guy, I thought that was going to be my enemy. Every single one cared about the students.
That's
I
good.
was shocked that there were no hidden agendas, or they were so hidden I didn't see them. We all wanted, and we disagreed on how, but all of us wanted the schools to be better. So there was no hatred at all. I was welcomed, and eventually they really grew to like my different perspective. My best friend on the board was the Christian conservative guy because he was a big businessman.
Yep.
And it turned out one of his frustrations when we talked about spending money is nobody understood to the extent he liked about present value of money, marginal cost, and all the business stuff. And when he mentioned it to me once, and I said, I teach that stuff in my calc class, we bonded because we knew the math.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was not bullied or harmed in any or attacked any way when I was on the school board. And that shocked me.
But
I was hunting for bear, and
yeah,
everybody, we were just trying to figure out how to do our best job.
but when you were running for school board, they gave you an awesome, like tagline. Who the fuck is Doug Shaw? I love. You could have made shirts with that. Who the blank is Doug Shaw? Oh my gosh, that would have been awesome. That's amazing. Like, why didn't someone give me that idea? We have
That was
so
a great
next. So this podcast is pre-recorded, obviously, but so my next week episode is going to be my campaign results. Whether I win or lose, you'll find out next week.
Okay, and I'm going to give you math advice on winning when the podcast is over. Topic.
But I'm happy to know that at least your school board treated you with respect, because this current school board that I'm trying to get on, they don't know me. First of all, they don't know who I am, but
well, you got to be aware
they do know. Go ahead.
The budget for your school board, the amount of money that they spend, is equivalent to the city council. When you go to these school board meetings, and there are very nice booths from very nice architects who want to sell the school board on stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money involved, and there's a lot of potential for corruption because your local architect really, really wants friends on the school board.
Yeah. Well, apparently I'm not a friend of anybody, because they've all sent the current school board did this. It was Patrick Baker. And I don't even know this guy either. But anyways, he authored a letter and had the school board members sign it, basically saying if they vote for Tim Flynn, Mankato area public schools will not have a bright future. And now he's going around telling people he stuck his neck out, like he put his career on the line, telling people not to vote for me because I'm such a horrible person.
Well, he's trying to butcher you by talking about shedding light, right?
You want to see how far they went?
Maker and a candlestick maker.
Yeah. So get this. So I'm gonna quote you that he passed on a quote to this group called Invisible St. Peter Greater Mankato. And
wait, what's the name of this group?
Invisible of St. Peter Greater Mankato. I don't know what this group is. It's a not-for-profit.
Sounds like a secret cult.
I don't know about this group. But
you don't
so there's this quote on this Facebook page that you can currently see. I'm going to put up for Facebook. You guys can't see it. I'll put it on the YouTube video, but I will read it. They're saying, I'm going to fast forward this here. They had their 4 endorsed candidates, which is not me. They're saying the other candidates in this race, that would be me, however, are being well funded by out-of-state groups who hold extreme positions that target vulnerable students and would increase rates of bullying and suicide. If you want to know more about that, click the link, which goes to Patrick Baker's page, which is a school board member. So first of all, there's campaign finance report. I've self-funded my whole campaign. Second, they're telling people that I would increase rates of bullying and I'm going to increase rates of suicide if I get elected. That's what I'm experiencing right now running for a campaign.
Wow.
It's really bad. Like, these board members do not want me on this board. They don't know me. They never met me. They don't want me on there. And I have a strong platform of anti-bullying. Yeah.
Cedar Falls, I don't know if it's an official rule, but it's definitely the unwritten rule. People who are currently board members do not say a word about the election if they're not running.
Well, I think that
they fund money to my opponents, but they never said a bad word about me or a good word. They just don't.
Our school board members are above the law, so they don't care.
Because they have to work with whoever wins. If you trash somebody and then that person wins, then you have to work with them. So
Well, they're
our
pretty
board,
sure.
you don't agree with them, and some of them
Yeah,
are real politically different from me. We all had
yeah.
this thing where you might have to work with these people. Don't say bad shit.
The point what really stuck is when they said I was going to cause kids to commit suicide. That's horrible. And that just shows you the type of people who are on our school board. They will
Yeah.
go to the extremes. And funny thing enough, every year our district loses students to private schools, to schools outside of our area. And they don't see a problem with that. They think they're doing an amazing job. But anyways, I'm going to talk more about this next week on my podcast after the election. I'm going to go through about whole experience, but I want to
I'll be
focus more on
listening.
you.
Should you?
Yes, yes. But whether I win or lose, you'll hear my experience, and it's
Yeah.
sadly, it's not a good experience. I can be honest with you right now, but I have met some amazing people through this as well. So there's pros and cons to running. But Doug, you were on the school board, and they were trying to work with anti-bullying. What was your experience with that?
Okay. Again, intention's good. Intention's good. And I would tell you if they weren't. Intentions were good. So we were making the transition. So when I started anti-bullying things where they talked about bullies and victims, now the thing is bullies, bystanders, and victims. And my main problem with that is it sends a false and very bad message that people are one or the other. They've divided everybody into three groups. Are you a bully? Are you a bystander? Or are you a victim? And in the grown-up world, where there is a lot of bullying, as you are experiencing, people take all three roles. And sometimes you're a bully, sometimes you're a bystander, and sometimes you're a victim. I don't want to admit that I've been a bully, but I have been. And if you start making bullies into this like other kind of species, then that means if you're a bully, you're never going to want to not be one because, well, that's what I am. I'm a bully. I identify with this class.
What the school board is doing right now is they're putting labels on kids.
Well,
during your time, of course.
The trend in anti-bullying education was what to do if you're a victim, what to do if you're a bystander. And they don't understand. And so here's where you're not prepared. So you have someone who's a friend of yours who would do anything for you, who's a good, upstanding person who defends you. And then in other contexts, he's a bully. And then you don't believe people. My friend is not a bully because he doesn't bully you. And you're one of those three groups. And so you put everybody in one of those three groups. And that's the message. And so what you have is people who are absolutely bullying people and nobody believes them because they say he's not in that class. Because I've seen him as a bystander and he stood up for me.
Yeah. I'm still confused on this layout. So you have to be, so there's basically for the anti-bullying campaign, you have to be one of those categories.
That's the way they talk. They don't.
To me, it doesn't make sense. I'm still trying to figure this out, their thought, and I'm still not getting this. Maybe I'll get it later on.
What they're trying to do is give kids practical tools as if you see bullying, what should you do?
Okay.
Which is fine. And I think that's a good thing. And I think, although now we can argue what the actual tools are, but.
Yeah, we call them upstanders. So
is that the new word? Upstander.
That's the new word. It came from Drew Alberg from the Bullying Recovery Resource Center in Colorado, which I love because these are people who don't stand by. They stand up. Upstanders.
That's good. Yeah, I like that better. But the point is, you can be in one context an upstander, in another context a victim, and in another context a bully. Mm-hmm. Some of my worst. The people who bullied me the worst in junior high were victims in elementary school.
Yeah.
And it's obvious why. And the times I have bullied people is because I had experience as a victim. And I wasn't going to let that happen again. And I didn't do it a lot because it turns out that I'm a shitty bully.
Just too nice of a person. Okay, so now I'm understanding.
I don't have and I don't want to go and finish the person off. I feel bad.
So now I'm starting. I think I got this. So if you were a target or victim of bullying, that means you cannot be placed in the bullying label.
That's the message that's being.
That makes no sense at all. But okay, so
that was the message. But as soon as you say bullies, upstanders, and victims, you're putting people into categories.
Yeah.
Those are classes of people. Those aren't behaviors.
But we know the school board loves putting people into categories. At least in my school,
Yeah.
school board does. They love categories. They love labels.
That's education in general. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm in the math ed and the math department. Yeah, that's education in general. That's another podcast about
Yeah.
putting people in the boxes thing.
So
I'm directing a theater show tonight, and I can't tell you how many people have asked, how can a math professor direct theater? It's like, because I don't fit in a box, and nobody does.
yeah,
That's a different podcast. But yeah, so as soon as you say the phrase bullies, upstanders, and victims, the message there is those are kinds of people as opposed to behaviors.
Yeah. That's not the right way to look at this.
I don't believe there's such a thing as a bully. I think there are such a things as people who do these things.
It's a behavior. Bullying is a behavior, and anyone can participate in this.
Person.
Yeah. A good friend of mine, Dr. Sean Kanan, he's been on my podcast before. He kind of referenced kind of what you're talking about. He called it a triangle. Everyone, but he said it this way: everyone has experienced bullying of some type. They were either the bully, they were the victim or target, or they saw it happening, which is very true.
Yeah.
But if you're going to run an anti-bullying program, you can't just put people into categories and try to build off that one category. You got to look at the behavior and understand, well, why is this kid participating in bullying behavior? You got to look at the kid who's doing the bullying because he's probably got some mental health issues that probably needs to get looked at. Yeah. And then you also got to look at the kid as well who's being targeted of bullying. But we've discussed this before in this podcast. But going back to what the school board was, do you remember what their anti-bullying policy was at that time to kind of regulate these three groups?
We had a program we paid for.
Okay.
Don't remember which one it was. It's probably not very different than the one that other people did. You know?
Yeah.
But so my two things. The first one was this: emphasizing that it was a type of person as opposed to a behavior.
Yeah.
Which I think served the students very badly. First of all, because it implied you can't change.
Yeah.
And second of all, because as an adult, then you're not aware that someone who is a really nice upstander with you could also be beating his wife.
Yeah.
And you don't believe he's beating his wife because he's so good to you. And you've gotten programmed into this idea you're one of the three. The other thing was this very one size fits all. Why do people bully? And it's not like there's a single reason. And I get having experienced all kinds of it. Some people bully because they were hurt at home. Yeah. Some people bully because they're bored, which is why I was bullied. I was not bullied by anybody because they were hurting at home and lashing out. It was because they were bored in class and a fun thing to do was to pick on me. Yeah. And in retrospect, I made it fun. I remember how I reacted. It was fun to pick on me. It was objectively fun. And so if you're bored doing math problems and then you can pick on me, that was fun. So they weren't malicious. They were bored. But some people bully because of malicious, and some people are just fucking sociopaths. Yeah. And unless you acknowledge that, then you're not going to win anyway, because there are people who do it because they get off on the pain.
Yeah.
So I really didn't like this, because the way you behave with different bullies, your reaction should be based on an individual situation, not a one-size-fits-all, which, of course, in any sort of institution, they want to give prescriptions. This is what you do. But it really depends on the people.
Yeah, I think it's also the lack of understanding. As a person who was bullied as a child, when you gave them your input that, hey, this is not how it should be done, what was their reaction? Did they agree with you? Did they say, well, what do you think about this?
The reaction was, I was just a guy talking. I hadn't done my homework, which was fair enough. It wasn't like I had any research to show them.
But you have lived experience.
Yes.
I mean,
it didn't count for
you can study about bullying, I guess, in a book, but if you haven't really experienced it.
I did not do the work to make a really solid case that we were going in the wrong direction, which I could if I didn't.
I guess okay, so let's talk about that. What kind of work would you have done differently?
I don't know, because we didn't really create original content. We had to choose from the programs that were out there.
You just came up So why didn't they just take? So my understanding of the school board is
this. There's a solution that will never ever pass the school board. Okay, no school board will ever announce, and this is something that works.
Yeah.
If someone bullies you, Sometimes, depending on the situation, the best thing to do is punch them in the face as hard as you can. And then it stops. And that is
It's
something that
sadly true.
no
It's
school
sadly
board
true
is
though, but yep.
ever going to endorse that policy.
Yep.
And I remember we told our daughter, you will not be punished if you hit him. And if the school punishes you, we will just laugh at them. And of course, she was horrified because she grew up in this anti-bullying thing, which is you never hit back. That was the message they got.
Yeah.
But they would actually taunt each other and call each other bullies, even if they weren't, because that was the way the kids would hurt each other, was, you're a bully, haha, right?
Yeah.
But so I was considered a Neanderthal. Fortunately, my wife backed me up on it. She and I were on the same page. It was such Neanderthal advice. My God, what are you, a Republican saying your kid should hit people? But it's like, no, the Republicans were right on this one. Sometimes the thing to do, if you're being bullied and you can do it, punch the bully in the face as hard as you can. And even if you get beat up, they're not going to touch you. Now, that's not for everybody, and that's not for every bully. No. And sometimes it's the worst thing you can do. And that's the problem, is sometimes it's the worst thing you can do. No school board's going to endorse this, but sometimes that does solve the problem.
But so they're not going to endorse it, which I totally agree. You don't want to endorse it. But we do know, because I teach martial arts for a living, and I have a student who was she was, what's that term? I can't think of it right now. She didn't have a gender. What's that called again?
Non-binary?
Non-binary. She's non-binary. And this kid wanted her to scream like a girl on the playground. And so this kid punched her in the stomach on the playground at school. And she went to go look for help, and the kid followed her, couldn't find a teacher. She turned around and round kicked that kid in the face, right in the nose. Made that kid cry. She gets in trouble. The school wanted her to apologize to the bullying victim, to the bully, and she didn't. But
she did or didn't?
She didn't. She did not apologize at all. But the bullying stopped that day.
Yeah,
hasn't been bullied again. So here's the problem with the school boards. They're not going to endorse that, but they're not going to do any. They're not going to make any policies that will prevent that from happening, where a kid actually has to either get the confidence to hit back. They're not going to make a policy that's going to prevent that. So what are they doing? They're just going to create more labels and say,
right. And some of it's
you're
the
a bully. Yeah.
There is the chain of command, right? The school board, that's ultimately the principal's decision. But where the school board comes in, and here's where you can do good. If the kid is suspended and appeals, then you're on that jury. And you can make the argue that that kid should not be suspended.
Yeah. I didn't know that. So,
and your district's different than mine. We never saw anything about detentions. If a kid got detention, we never heard about it. If a kid was suspended from school, then that could come before us, and that's where I did some real good.
Okay, good.
When we were talking about penalties for kids who were suspended.
Yeah, I think we kind of went off topic on my original question, though. Going back to your research that you should have done to help make a better policy for the school board, what do you have ideas now that you would start trying to create to make a stronger anti-bullying policy for your school?
I think the first thing what I would do now if I were going to take it up is see what successful schools are doing. And that's the homework. And that was a weakness. I didn't do the homework.
I've heard of successful schools.
I've seen what other districts are doing, and now we have an internet. There's never any excuse for not doing research now.
Yeah. There's this one school out in California. This one guest told us about her school, which does an amazing job at bully prevention. And all the kids are just taught to say this phrase. If they see someone trying to pick on another kid, they stand up and say, "Hey, we don't do that here." And it just stops it in place. It just stops it. We don't do that here. So if you have a friend, he's a new kid from town, he's going to pick on someone, whatever, that friend that's been at the school tells that new friend, "Hey, we don't do that here. You don't do that. You get in trouble." And it just stops it. So it's teaching kids about respect and kindness for each other. And this school's got it down, apparently. So this mom's had nothing but positive things to say, like, wow, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
And I feel like our current schools right now, so the big issue on the school board that we're talking about is that they admittedly know that kids do not feel safe in our schools, especially of kids of a different race or a different sexuality. They say kids don't feel safe at school. And the only way we can make them feel safe at school is by putting a symbol in the classroom, which I don't see how that's going to work. My thought is you want kids to feel safe at school. How about we start teaching kids basic respect and kindness? Now, I know that should also be done at home as well. Parents got to parent their kids as well. But we also need to encourage that at schools too.
That's why I like that
and
phrase
kindness.
you said. We don't do that here.
Yeah.
The word here means that we're not going to condemn what happens at home. What's happening at home is happening at home. You're in a space now where that's different.
Yeah. It's such a, and I love it. So if I get on a school board and I want to try to bring this up, I want to get kids to start saying this. Hey, we don't do that here. If you recognize it, just say it to your friend. Hey, we don't do that here. Recognize it.
Again, there's a limit to what the school board does. This is something that maybe principals have to do.
Yeah. But it's educated principals, and they got to be on board too. And the one thing I'm seeing right now with my election is that, now this is probably going back to about you going to that colleague's whiteboard and putting an I on his board. I'm kind of feeling this way right now, that nobody in the public school systems in my town wants me on, because none of them stick up for me. None of them send me private messages. The school board right now is going crazy, spreading false lies about me. One, they never met me. Actually, one, Carrie Pratt, has met me in person. That's about it. But she's even a part of this, like, taking me down. They're doing everything they can not to get me on. They're spreading lies. And the fact that they said I'm going to cause suicide and bullying rates to increase, I just can't believe they can get away with that. Like, how can you do it? How can you say that about somebody and just feel good about yourself? And how can people vote for people who says that about other people? It's like, no wonder why bullying is not going to get changed in my school. It's because we have a school board doing it to other people.
Right.
And I just don't get it.
Are there any candidate forums? Are you going to be able to speak?
I went to one candidate forum for League of Women, and it was so boring. I was bored during it. It was just nothing controversial. It was just about normal stuff. And like, I can't remember what the questions were, to be honest with you.
Okay, so I did well in the candidate forums. And one thing you can do is see if it's boring, that's good for you. This might talk to you for your next run next time you do this.
Yeah.
If it's boring, then you have it, because now you get to be the interesting person. I mean, here's where Donald Trump got it right during the primary stuff. All he had to do was be the most interesting person on that stage, and he succeeded. Everybody else was speaking in measured tones and using kind of political language. And he got up there and he said stuff. Didn't matter what he said. He talked like a normal person, and he was the most interesting person there. And the message was, he's not like all these other people.
Yeah.
Which, if you're in a field of 7, that's what you need. So, for example, we had a school called North Cedar that the school board had been dicking around for years. Maybe they were going to close it. Maybe they weren't. They didn't have hot water. And so we were at a forum, and a North Cedar parent said, what are you going to do about North Cedar? Again, they did not have hot water. And every other candidate said, well, these issues are complex, and we're going to do this. And they spoke like candidates. When it was my turn, I got up and I stood up, because we all stood up for this one. And I said, you guys are getting screwed. And I sat down, and the room was silent. And the moderator said, you have time. Would you like to elaborate? And I said, yes, I would. And I stood up and I said, you guys are getting really screwed. And I sat down.
So you had an audience at your forum?
Yeah.
We didn't have no audience. It was just recorded.
And it was televised, yeah. But the point is, I didn't offer any solutions. I was totally vapid, right? I said nothing. Except I acknowledged what nobody else would acknowledge. And can you guess what quote was the one everybody remembers from that forum?
You guys are getting screwed.
Yeah. So that's what you got to do. If you are at a boring forum, that is your chance to get votes.
Yeah. I wish we talked before that forum back in September, because I do remember one question from the forum.
The boring guy. I go, who's that Tim Flynn who actually talks to people?
Yeah. I do remember a quote from the question from the forum. The question was, how do you plan to bring back students into the Mankato area public schools? And the incumbents were saying, well, we need to promote more positivity in our school, blah, 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 blah. And as it was my turn to talk after them, I go, Well, you guys have been doing that. You guys have been posting positive stuff about the school, but still not working. So that's probably the only time I attacked the board on what they
And I
are
wouldn't
saying
call
about.
it an attack. An attack is this. An attack is you're driving people away from the schools because you suck.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to figure out, because that's the common wisdom. I don't know what you're hearing. I don't know what you're hearing, but the common wisdom is you suck. And we have to not have that reputation. What are we going to do about that? And then you sit
Yeah.
down.
The problem is the people on
I
the
don't
school
even know what
board.
I'm talking about. And I just
Yeah.
said,
The people on the school board aren't business owners either. They run around their private social media pages saying whatever the heck they want without realizing it doesn't matter if it's your private social media page or not. You are still an elected official. You still
Yep.
represent the business you are a part of, because I'm a private business owner. Tim Flynn went around and said hateful, hurtful things about other people, even though I said it on my personal Facebook page. Since I am the face of my business, that does not look good for Cato Karate as well. And these school board members don't understand that. How they act in public, how they speak privately to people is not a good representation of the business you are representing, which schools are a business. They need students to make money. First of all, you can't be telling people that if you elect Tim Flynn, he's going to make kids commit suicide and stuff. You can't say that stuff. But this current school board does say that. And, it's sad that they've gone this far to do it.
mm-hmm.
So do you have any advice for parents or kids who are experiencing bullying in schools and you feel like the schools aren't really helping them out?
Yep.
What
First
can
thing,
they do?
for parents is stop doing the pre-program stuff. Find out what specifically is happening, because every situation is different, and everybody in the world on the internet, every blog post, every administrator is going to tell you every situation is the same. It could be that the solution is to call the kid's parents. It could be that the solution is to try to make friends with the kid. It could be the solution is to punch the kid in the face. You don't know. My biggest bullying thing was solved when my mom invited the kid over to my house with the mother to apologize, and then the mom spontaneously got into a conversation, so the bully and I just wound up playing together, and we got to be friends. And people don't agree that people can't believe that I am still friends with this kid who bullied me mercilessly, but we became friends. What the fuck? I don't know. And
Yeah,
I'm not saying that would work for every pair of kids.
No, but it's very common though. It's very common.
Our parents were wise enough to know, hey, these two kids have a lot in common. I bet if we got them in a room together, they would start playing games, and we did. We licked cards.
Yeah. With parent supervision though, right? Or how did that work?
I don't remember there being parent supervision. In retrospect, knowing my mom, I bet she was freaking listening at the door.
Okay.
But as a kid, I do not have any memory of there being parental supervision. As an adult, knowing my mother, there is no way there was not parental supervision.
Yeah.
But the advice I'm giving is every situation is different, and you have to figure out what's going to work for your situation. And I know that's a mealy-mouthed answer, but that's the honest truth, is there is no one, this is what you do if your kid is being bullied, because every situation is different.
Yep. I had a Crack Shot Bullying seminar a few weeks ago in Glendale, California, and Michael D. Cohen, who is an actor, he brought up an acronym called UP. And the U stands for understanding why you're being bullied. And I love that because because if we can figure out why our kids are being bullied, we'll have an easier time trying to resolve this. So I just love the acronym UP. So and then the P was protection. Protection can be, self-defense. It could be going to a teacher, going to your parent, going to a trusted adult, whatever. But the understanding of why you're being bullied I thought that was really great. Get kids to understand why you're being bullied. Like if you're in fourth grade, did you know why you're being picked on? Did you know it's because you had the accent?
No, in retrospect, and it wasn't just the accent. That's an easy out. The accent was definitely part of it, but I was strange.
Yeah, I think for kids, that's the tough part, trying to understand. But I do feel like we need...
Second grade, we learned a secret, or I think third grade, we learned a secret code. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, and we had to write and decode a message.
Okay.
And I thought that was a stupid code. It was too easy. So I spent some time making this elaborate code that nobody wanted to hear about, and I wanted to tell everybody about, and nobody wanted to hear it. I kept talking about it. And so I started writing all these messages in code. You know, it's weirdo behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. So, Doug, I want to thank you for coming on today, sharing me your knowledge as a former school board member, sharing us your story.
Thank you.
If people want to get a hold of you, do you accept emails? Do you have a
Doug
Instagram, Facebook?
Doug at DougShaw.com, and I do workshops on education that are fantastic. I do teacher development.
Perfect. And say your email one more time or your contact.
Doug at DougShaw.
Okay. Do you have a website as well?
Doug, yes.
DougShaw.com?
Yep.
Okay. Making sure.
I also have a book on creativity, which has nothing to do with this podcast, but my late mother would be mad if I didn't mention it. Buy my book. Okay.
So if you're listening on audio, the link will be in the description. If you are on YouTube, you saw it go across your screen. So, Doug, thank you so much for coming on today.